Hi, and welcome to my Brain and Beyond channel where I talk about all things brain. I'm Jo Bailey, clinical psychologist, and today we're talking about the brain of a flat earther or a conspiracy theorist more generally. Before we begin, let's do a quick questionnaire and see if you qualify as a conspiracy theorist or perhaps just as a free independent thinker. A quick yes or no is all you have to do to the following 8 questions. Question 1, was the moon landing, or at least part of the moon landing, staged? Question 2, is it possible the COVID vaccine isn't as safe and effective as you first thought it to be? Question 3, do you think the JFK assassination has some suspicious circumstances around it? Question 4, are there secret and elite organisations that hide among us, like the Skull and Bones Order or the Illuminati? Question 5, did the US government have a hand in the 9/11 attacks or the Waco massacre? Question 6, do you think NASA has secret information about UFOs? Question 7, have you ever believed the government has overtly lied to you? And the final question, is there any chance the Earth could be flat? Now, if you answered yes to 2 or more of these questions, chances are you might have been labelled a conspiracy theorist, or at least you're an independent thinker. But which one? See, in this day and age, there is very little, well, let's say no, credible evidence that the Earth is flat, and yet there's still many people that believe it to be true. Now, why do you think that is? Well, when you look at the first 7 questions that I just gave you, the first 7 all involve government cover-ups and deception and lies of some kind. And if you don't think the government lies to you, well, then maybe I need to do another video on that, just for you. But in my forensic training, I learned a lot about burden of proof, or what we call evidentiary standards. This simply means the threshold of proof or evidence required to find one guilty. In most civil cases, the standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence, and this standard means that one is able to show that a particular fact or event was more likely than not to have occurred. So in other words, the case has been established by more than 50%. In criminal matters, however, we require evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, and this is a much higher threshold to meet, and it means the only logical explanation that can be derived from the presented evidence of the case has almost certainly been established, and that no other logical explanation can be inferred or deducted from the evidence. So, in other words, it's a case that's been established by as close to 100% as possible. But nothing is absolute, not even the truth.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Miss Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
So I'm going to revisit those conspiracy questions again soon under an evidentiary standard of preponderance of the evidence, or a belief that proof for the theory is at least greater than 50%, so more likely than not. But first, I want you to be open-minded, because free thinking is something we should encourage and praise, not shame and condemn. Now, I hesitated to deviate here and show you several highly convincing pieces of information on the first 7 conspiracies that I just mentioned. This video would probably run way over 45 minutes if I were to do that, and I know from my YouTube stats that most viewers have an attention span of about 1 to 2 minutes, and then they're gone. So if you're still here now, then you are above average, at least in my YouTube data, and you likely have an inquisitive and an analytical mind. So thanks for staying around this long. But back to what I was saying. All the conspiracies I mentioned at the start, plus many, many more, have ample information freely available on the net to look up, both for and against. See, you can find evidence for or against anything you want these days, but only a discerning and an analytical mind is prepared to, 1, look at both sides of the argument equally and without bias, and 2, to have the sense to separate the evidence from the bullshit. So if you haven't already looked at the evidence for and against those theories, go and do so. You may be very surprised what you find, and what you find may just be a very large rabbit hole that you inadvertently start to fall down. But a flat Earth? Really? Well, no, I don't believe the Earth is flat. I think there is evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to suggest that the Earth is a sphere. and that we do not reside on a flat earth under a dome with icebergs at the edge. But I gotta say, I have seen some pretty cool clips and videos that attempt to cast doubt on the matter and lure me into that rabbit hole now and then. But beyond reasonable doubt, no. What about a preponderance of the evidence? So 50-50, not that either.
I want to know, because they say the pilots know a lot. Do you think the Earth is flat or no?
I know it's flat.
You know it's flat?
Sorry, flat earthers, you do have some goodies, but not good enough to tip the scales in balance of your arguments. So what is it about the brain of a flat earther that does compel such conviction of belief, even when the rest of us just can't see it? Well, see, there is the slippery slope that leads straight down to the bottom of that rabbit hole. Let's have a look a little bit closer. You see, the first 7 questions I asked you all have some genuine pieces of persuasion that are very hard to overlook. And again, all this is freely available on the web if you want to check it out, such as Stanley Kubrick's involvement in shooting parts of the moon landing, the relatively solid evidence we now have around efficacy of the vaccines, the fact that pharmaceutical industry has lied many times for profit, with Pfizer facing thousands of lawsuits for medical injuries and setting a record-breaking fine of $2.3 billion to settle civil and criminal charges regarding its marketing of certain drugs. And if you haven't seen the documentary In Plain Sight, or even multiple documentaries and inquiries about the US government's knowledge, negligence and complicity of both 9/11 and Waco, then you will have your eyes opened. Similarly, evidence around the JFK conspiracy, hidden extraterrestrial encounters and or communication, and secret organizations is all pretty hard to squash completely. And I'm so tempted to digress and show you, but there is so much out there if you're really interested. And it's not the purpose of this video to open those cans of worms. Suffice to say, at least in my mind, that all these have a case established that by evidentiary standards is 50-50. And only an independent, unbiased and free-thinking brain is going to try and work out where the last pebble goes that tips the scale one way or another. So go and have a look and see where your allegiance lies. But why am I using flat earthers as an outlier? And what is it about flat earthers' brain that is different? Well, here is the thing. All these conspiracies where we have some sort of credible evidence, maybe not evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, but at least close to a preponderance of the evidence, involve, you guessed it, government cover-ups or the powers that be lying to us. So if you believe that the government does indeed lie to us, which I absolutely do, then it can be a fast and furious slip from independent thinking to absurdity. It's a bit like a literal slide. You start getting too much speed and momentum and it's hard to stop and get off. And if you're sliding so fast that you've lost control, then there is nothing but absurdity and ridicule waiting for you at the end. So a creative, skeptical and analytical mind is good, but be careful you don't take it too far and, for flat earthers, fall off the edge. So why do some people believe in a flat earth when there is evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to the contrary? Well, let's have a look at 7 insights into the brain of a flat earther and see what we can conclude. Number 1, the human brain likes to make sense of things. We prefer predictability and understanding over chaos and uncertainty. So when things don't make sense, we make sense of them, even if that sense is nonsense. Number 2, the human brain does not enjoy feeling isolated or vulnerable. We are social creatures and we want to fit in. The amygdala and the insula is the drama center of our brain, and it's thought to be overactive in the conspiratorial mind. When we feel alone or vulnerable in our belief systems, we are more inclined to fill in the gaps or confabulate if it means being part of a complementary group. Who wouldn't want to feel accepted and to fit in? So finding groups of people that appeal directly to our vulnerabilities and potentially our non-logical rationales ensures conspiracy theories are cemented, even in the face of conflicting evidence. Number 3, the The human brain loves to see patterns. It is a pattern and association machine. Some studies have shown that the brains of conspiracy theorists are more likely to experience illusory pattern perception, basically seeing patterns where there are none. Now, we all do this to some extent. We see patterns in the clouds, we see patterns in food, we see patterns in random numbers. So when a pattern of belief has been formed, such as the government lying to us, then it's easy to continue drawing long bows and making assumptions that everything the government does is a lie. Even the government tells the truth, sometimes. Number 4. The human brain often engages in a process called confirmation bias. Now, this means once a belief is formed, the person will look only at evidence that confirms it. And as I mentioned earlier, in this online age, we can find evidence for or against anything we want. Dismissing contradictory evidence is not a sign of independent thinking. It's a sign of stupidity and ignorance. But confirmation bias is a psychological phenomenon and a big one when understanding the brain of a flat earther. Number 5, religious beliefs can ensure the human brain pursues a non-scientific rationale, and with flat earthers, there are many scriptural verses often used to declare why the earth is flat. But even the Bible can create confirmation bias. So flat earthers might refer to scriptures such as Revelation 20, verse 8, which mentions the 4 corners of the earth, which assumes a globe, because a globe can't have corners. But funnily enough, Revelation chapter 20 verse 8 is also talking about Satan's reign and deception. Go figure. But the Bible also has verses such as Isaiah 40:22, which indicate God sits above the circle of the earth. And of course, flat earthers will say a circle is not a sphere, and it's probably a flat circle. But either way, a round shape doesn't have corners. So nothing more to see here. Moving on. Number 6. Nothing holds credibility like established proof. So when the human brain can draw on substantive existing evidence to confirm a potential theory, then this is a nice mental heuristic or shortcut. For instance, conspiracy apologists point to the uncovering of well-known conspiracies like Watergate to substantiate their beliefs in other government cover-ups. But this is what we call cognitive distortion, something we might call fortune-telling in psychology. It is completely removed from the circumstances of the original event. Watergate confirms cover-up as it pertains to the era of Nixon administration. It has nothing to do with aliens, moon landings, or flat earth, even if the government is a common thread of connection. But it does remind us that humans are deceitful beings at times, none more so when there is power or money at stake. Number 7. Neuroscientists speculate that people who believe in multiple conspiracy theories may have excess amounts of a neurotransmitter called dopamine in their brains. Dopamine is involved with emotion, reward, cognition, and decision making. Now, this is a bit of a bold claim in some ways because it is just a theory, and increased subcortical release of dopamine is also our primary working theory for schizophrenia. But extreme conspiracy theorists and some people with schizophrenia do share that condition of seeing patterns in everything, what technically we call apophenia. Now, anyone can experience apophenia or patternicity, but if you live with schizophrenia, it may be part of a delusion. And conspiracy theorists are often called delusional, but that doesn't mean they are schizophrenic either. It doesn't go both ways, so the dopamine theory remains a theory, maybe a conspiratorial one. So what can we conclude from all of this? Is the earth really flat? No, I don't believe it is. In fact, I know it's not. Does the government lie and deceive us on a daily basis? Well, probably. Is the government involved in cover-ups of mass deception, massive lies on a global scale? Well, we do know that there is some established track history there, so there's a possibility. And what about the flat earther's brain? Is it grossly different from a normal brain in some way? Well, while some neuroscientists will have you believe this is true, I don't think that it is. To me, it's simply explained by individual differences. The unique contribution of genetics and environment, so this is the socio-religious culture in which the person's been raised, the set of random exposures and experiences that people have had along the way, the reality that government cover-ups have, do, and always will exist, and the slippery slope of the creative and independent mind that just fails to get off the ride in time. So sorry to say, but the flat earthers and conspiracy theorists are among us. They may even be in your workplace or living next door. Maybe they're in your home. After this video, I'm pretty sure they are. But they are usually law-abiding and inconspicuous people that silently and unassumingly merge into the environment around them. And in a world of inexplicable events where nothing is truly certain or known, conspiracy theorists may just be the ones that keep us alert, keep us on our toes. Because in the words of Oscar Wilde, the truth is rarely pure and never simple.